Hello everyone and welcome back to Raging Levine's reviews of all the cards in Commander 2020 and Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, with an eye of course toward casual/social commander, somewhere around a 5 or 6 on the command zone scale. I'm not a big tutor person, I'm not a big infinite combo person. If that helps you understand where I come from when I review these cards for Commander, so be it. I didn't do a video last night, yesterday, whatever time you want to call that, and today we're just kind of blasting through. We've got a lot of cards to go through and not a lot of time to do it, so I'm going to go at lightning speed and you're going to have to keep up. So let's start with Akeem, the Soaring Wind, 2, a blue, a red, and a white for a 3/4 legendary bird dinosaur with flying. Whenever you create one or more tokens for the first time each turn, create a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying. And then 3, a blue, a red, and a white creature tokens you control gain double strike until end of turn. So this is a Jeskai tokens commander, of course. You want instants like Secure the Wastes or enchantments like Mobilization to kind of augment your token making capabilities on opponents' turns, because of course the more tokens you make on other turns, the more you can sort of maximize the first time each turn restriction on Akeem. So make sure you have repeatable ways to do that across the turn cycle. Next up, we have Ethereal Forager, 4 blue for a 3/3 elemental whale with Delve. Flying, and whenever it attacks, you may return an instant or sorcery card exiled with it to its owner's hand. So in a spells deck, sometimes you feel kind of guilty about delving. You've got all kinds of effects like Mystic Retrieval. You want spells back. You play your Ethereal Forager. You delve spells that you like away. You don't have to feel too guilty as long as you get a chance to attack with it. Using something like Expedite to haste this up would be great. Maybe put some boots on it and let this elemental whale kind of figure out what to do with that anatomically. I'm not going to worry too much about that, but you have to make sure this attacks at least once. Otherwise, you're just getting a really, really terrible deal, exiling cards you want to get back, and that's not good. So maybe hedge a little bit. Next up, Tidal Barracuda, 3 and a blue for a 3/4 fish. Any player may cast spells as though they had flash, but your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. So that's an interesting proposition. Protecting your turn from opposing flash stuff is really great. Your opponents already want to cast their instants during your turn, so stopping them from doing that is a pretty good trade-off here for giving your opponent's cards flash effectively. People will not be lining up to kill Tidal Barracuda unless you are the biggest threat at the table, because they're going to lose access by doing it. If you notice that you're the lowest on cards in hand and your opponent has Tidal Barracuda and you can kill it, you probably should, because you're getting the least flexibility out of it, and that's when your opponent's Tidal Barracuda needs to go. I think this card's very good. I'm interested to see just how good it is or if I've overestimated it, but I think protecting yourself on your own turn from the flash spells means that people are going to be really firing off their spells on your opponent's turns, which means they won't be thinking about you when they're doing that. Next up is Deadly Rollick, 3 and a black for an instant. This is another one of those darn free spells. If you control commander, you may cast this without paying its mana cost. Exile target creature. Point removal, always necessary, and it's way better when it's free. Unfortunately, this card's kind of borderline when you have to hard cast it. Cards like Eat to Extinction can hit Planeswalkers as well, for example, so it's frustrating that Deadly Rollick is restricted to creatures. That being said, I'm absolutely still going to play this quite a lot in black decks just to have a free way to remove a problem creature at instant speed. Titan Hunter, 4 and a black for a 4/5 human warrior. At the beginning of each player's end step, if no creatures died this turn, Titan Hunter deals 4 damage to that player. 1 and a black, sack a creature, you gain 4 life. I don't know who wants this. Honestly, Aristocrats decks are often doing things off turn. The sacrifice effect is not great. It's probably too costly for the ability it offers. I'm kind of off it. This is not like a good impatience type effect. I don't think this is what you're looking for here in the sacrifice type decks. Next up, we have Frontier Warmonger, 3 and a red for a 4/4 human warrior. Whenever one or more creatures attack one of your opponents or a planeswalker they control, Those creatures gain menace until end of turn. It makes blocking harder, which can help pressure planeswalkers or force some better attacks in the mid-game. Honestly, I'd rather just play a card that affects me. I don't really get spending a lot more mana for Goblin War Drums to add a little extra infighting with your opponents. It's cool, it's fun. If you want to play it for fun, you should do that, but I don't think the card is terribly efficient. Next up, we have Spellpire Phoenix, 3 red for a 4/2 Phoenix with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may return instant or sorcery card with a cycling ability from your graveyard to your hand, and at the beginning of each end step, if you cycled 2 or more cards this turn, return it from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so this is another really easy inclusion for cycling decks. You're actually going to want this card to die over and over again so you can keep returning cycling cards to your hand. So that's kind of an interesting factor here. Obviously, if you can keep hitting people for 4 in the air, that's great too. But if this can die and continue to recur your cyclers, that's fantastic. I think this is an easy inclusion in most cycling decks with red, to be perfectly honest. Just, make sure you have enough cycling. Don't clog your deck up with cycling enablers and forget to have cycling abilities. Next up is Capricopian, X and a green for a 0/0 Goat Hydra. Enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. Pay 2, put a +1/+1 counter on Capricopian, then you may reselect which player it's attacking. Only the player it's attacking may activate this ability, and only during the declare attacker step. So your opponents can kind of spend their excess mana shunting this around the table at each other. Goat Hydras are cool. Let's be clear, Goat Hydras are cool. I'm not over the moon about this one, since the person you want to attack probably won't be the person who gets hit. And even though they're growing your Hydra, they're growing your evasionless, trampleless Hydra, you're going to have to do a lot of work to make Capricopian look like a real threat. They can't just be chump blocked, so I think I'm kind of off it. Next up is Sawtusk Demolisher, 4 green for a 6/6 beast with mutate, 3 and a green. It's got trample, and whenever it mutates, destroy target non-creature permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green beast token. So very reminiscent of Terastodon. It won't be as powerful or obnoxious, but it's still useful to pack utility abilities like this into mutate piles. After all, there's almost always a non-creature permanent you want to destroy somewhere on the battlefield, and being able to do that whenever you mutate kind of rolled into the other effects you're getting from mutate. The more things you have like that, the more efficient mutating is, and the more sustainable it is to keep doing it long term while you spend time and other cards and resources protecting your mutate creature. Next up, we have Bonder's Ornament. 3 colorless for an artifact. Tap to add a mana of any color. 4 and tap. Each player who controls a permanent named Bonder's Ornament draws a card. So this card is worse the more people are playing it. It's kind of a weird game of chicken. There are other 3 mana artifacts out there that make a mana of the color you need. There's the new obelisk type cards. I honestly think the only way to win the game with Bonder's Ornament is not to play it. So let's move on to Keen Sight Mentor. We're into the Ikoria cards now. Those were all Commander 2020. We're back into Ikoria. Some of these are going to go faster, like this one. 2 and a white for a 1/4 human cleric. When it enters, put a vigilance counter on target non-human creature you control. 1 and a white, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with vigilance. Not as exciting as Trample. That's about all I have to say. Not a big commander card. Lava Brink Venturer, 2 and a white for a 3/3 human soldier. As it enters the battlefield, choose odd or even. Lava Brink Venturer has protection from each converted mana cost of the chosen value. I think you'll choose even a lot to get 0 to have protection from tokens and just wander right by them, because there's always a token deck, it seems like. Similar to the odd even Wrath we saw, but I think better because it's actually going to have more impact. You'll get to make more choices of where to attack, where to not. Maybe get some swords if you've picked even and put them on Lava Brink Venturer and go to town. Oh, I've moved the card over. Let's move it back, and let's look at Swallow Whole. 1 white mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, tap an untapped creature you control. Exile target tapped creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that you tapped to pay this spell's additional cost. So even if the creature that you use to cast the spell, the one that you tap as an additional cost, even if that dies before this resolves, your spell still resolves. So don't worry about that. It does only hit tapped creatures, but 1 mana to exile something is very good, very efficient. If you want to get even more value out of this, use this with a creature you want tapped that doesn't want to attack. Something like Gilder Bairn with the untapped symbol, or King Makar the Gold Cursed with Inspire. Those are both solid choices. Next up we have Will of the All Hunter. 1 and a white for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's blocking, instead put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Cycling 2. Will they? Won't they? I'm going with won't they. This card's not useful very much in Commander. Next up, Escape Protocol. 1 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cycle a card, you may pay 1. Ooh, I like how we're doing this. I like where this is going. When you do, exile target artifact or creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Okay, so you get repeatable blink when you cycle. So you can blink your Spellpire Phoenix and get your cycled card back. You can blink Rooting Moloch and recast your cycled card. We'll see Rooting Moloch in a minute. Don't worry, we'll get there. I think Escape Protocol is great. Obviously, it's not quite Astral Slide. You're not defensively shunting creatures away, but you are getting a blink, and the blink should get you more value, ideally. And what these cycling decks want is more fuel for the engine, more value, and to spin up, get more cards, and find something to do that's going to win them the game. Escape Protocol is going to help you do that. Next up, Keep Safe. Oh, look at that big owl. I could look at that all day. It's so adorable. I just want to play this card just because it's got a cute owl on it. Good news, though, you're going to want to play this card, I think, regardless. 1 and a blue instant. Counter target spell that targets a permanent you control. Draw a card. Okay. This is a solid way to protect your commander, and that's something you really want to do because recasting your commander over and over again in a commander-dependent deck gets really unpleasant. You can protect any permanent you control. So you can protect your Guardian Project, another engine card of a similar nature, something like that that's drawing you a lot of cards, generating a lot of value. Keep Safe can protect that from a targeted spell. Draw a card also is really nice. Also, there's a great owl in the art. Don't know if you noticed. Probably wouldn't have said anything about it, but I just wanted to throw that in at the end there. Really cool owl. You know, just as a bonus. Love that owl. Hoot hoot. Ominous Seas, 1 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas. That's a great counter type. Remove 8 Foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas to create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. Cycling 2. This takes a long time to pay off, right? And it just gets you a big ground creature. I'm interested in trying this, obviously, in a cycling deck. I don't have high hopes. But if you're already drawing a lot of cards off turn, something like Mind's Eye, this could be worth trying out. Next up, Bushmeat Poacher. 3 and a black for a 2/4 human soldier and a name that I can never unsay. 1 tap, sacrifice another creature. You gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Draw a card. The name is a lot. The effect is not. There are other ways to turn creatures into cards. You have to pay 1. You have to tap this. It's not easily repeatable. I would give this a pass. Unbreakable Bond, 4 and a black for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a lifelink counter on it. Just plays an Amplify. You don't. It's not. This is a limited card. Clash of Titans, 3 red for an instant. Target creature fights another target creature. Huge upgrade from Blood Feud. Not that that's exactly the card we were clamoring for. Fire Prophecy, 1 and a red for an instant. Deals 3 damage to target creature. You may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. If you do, draw a card. Looks like a limited card. That's fine. Next up, Flame Spill. 2 and a red instant. Deals 4 damage to target creature. Excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. Okay, this spell basically has Trample. All this flame is built to spill right over past the creature onto the opponent. That's cool for red decks. I think, standard red decks could be interested in Flame Spill. It does cost a lot, but the extra damage to the dome could be useful. Not really a commander card that I'm super hyped about. Maybe some niche possibilities. Rooting Moloch. Here we go. 4 and a red for a 4/4 lizard. When it enters the battlefield, exile target card with a cycling ability from your graveyard. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. So, we mentioned this earlier. It's a fun way to get extra value out of a cycling card. Works with something like a cycling land, a Forgotten Cave. Maybe you miss a land drop, you play your Rooting Moloch, you play your Forgotten Cave, all of a sudden you have not missed that land drop, or maybe you actually cast something with cycling from your graveyard. This actually works, and it's important to know this, with cycling abilities that aren't just cycling. So something like basic land cycling, forest cycling, wizard cycling, sliver cycling, it works as long as the card has that ability in your graveyard. So you can target your Sylvan Reclamation and then cast it after having land cycled it to help make your land drops early in the game. That's pretty cool. Sanctuary Smasher, 4 red for a 6/4 Rhino Beast with first strike and cycling for 2 and a red. When you cycle it, you put a first strike counter on target creature you control. Does not seem geared for Commander. Next up, the almighty Brushwag. Green for a 1/1 Brushwag with trample, 3 and a green. Almighty Brushwag gets +3/+3 until end of turn. And then our flavor text here, laughed at the Brushwag. Hunter's expression meaning died unexpectedly. So Brushwag will kill you. That's important to know. All the animals are scared of the Brushwag here. Obviously, this is the creature that you want in your mutate pile to give it trample and this ability. Obviously, you really only want this creature if you want to look at Brushwag, but you should probably put it in your deck. And the reason I say this is you don't want to make this little Brushwag mad. I'm trying to point at it. There we go. Don't make the Brushwag mad. I don't recommend it. The Brushwag will get you. Trust the almighty Brushwag, fear the almighty Brushwag. Next up, Barrier Breach. 2 and a green for an instant, exile up to 3 target enchantments, cycling 2. 3 enchantments is usually more than you're going to want to hit, but if you play against a lot of people with a lot of enchantments on a regular basis, give it a try, I guess. There's other cycling-enabled utility spells coming up that you'll probably like better. Charge of the Forever Beast, 2 and a green for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, reveal a creature card from your hand. Charge of the Forever Beast deals damage to target creature or planeswalker, each equal to the revealed card's power. So you could play this in a mono green deck and have some point removal that you don't normally have too much access to. I mean, you get Beast within, but then things kind of drop down to like Unyara Beasting, and that's not really what we're looking for. So Charge of the Forever Beast could help. It is sorcery speed, which is unfortunate, but you do still get to blast something by dealing 12 damage via the Galta in your hand, or whatever you have. Migratory Greathorn, 3 and a green for a 3/4 beast, mutate 2 and a green. Whenever this mutates, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So in the early game, you can mutate this onto something like an Elvish Visionary to get your mutate pile started, and then later mutate your commander onto that pile and try to snowball value from there, especially if your commander is one of the ones you can do for 5. If you're lucky. I don't remember if any of the green ones cost 5, but do your research, folks, before you make videos. Don't be like me. I think this card is reasonable in the mutate decks. I'll be giving it a try in Brakos. Monstrous Step, 4 and a green, sorcery. Target creature gets +7/+7 until end of turn. Up to one other target creature blocks it this turn if able, cycling 2. So another stab at green removal, not one I'm impressed with. Wilt, 1 and a green, instant destroy target artifact or enchantment, cycling 2. This is naturalized with cycling. I can really get behind this. I'm not sure if this beats out Return to Nature for the slot in the deck because the graveyard mode on Return to Nature is often so good, but I'm going to give Wilt a try and see if it can land the spot in the deck. Boneyard Lurker, 2 a black and a green for a 4/4 Nightmare Beast. Mutate 2 and 2 green-black hybrid mana. Whenever it mutates, return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. I think this goes straight in Brakos because regrowing permanents is great in mutate decks. Gives you a steady stream of mutate bases to put things on. You're going to lose a lot of mutate creatures when piles get destroyed. More ways to have redundancy in decks like that cannot possibly hurt. Ooh, it's Eerie Ultimatum. So the ultimatums are back. You may remember this cycle from Shards of Alara. Well, good news. Ultimatums have returned. White, white, black, 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 green, green for a sorcery. Return any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, I don't know about you, but I find in Commander I play a lot of decks where all my permanents have different names. And if that's kind of where you find yourself too, I definitely recommend Eerie Ultimatum. Obviously hard to cast as all the ultimatums are, but return any number of permanent cards with different names from your graveyard to the battlefield is just such a wild effect. If you're stocking your graveyard in something like a Carador deck, any Abzan deck that wants to fill up the graveyard, play Eerie Ultimatum. you'll win games with it. You just will. You won't even know when you cast it. Then all your permanents will come back. You'll have a bunch of triggers. You'll be able to sacrifice a bunch of stuff, deal a bunch of damage, and you'll be like, wait, I won the game when I cast that. That was pretty good. I should do that more. Next up, Emergent Ultimatum. For black, black, green, 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 blue, blue. Sorcery. Search your library for up to 3, count them, 3 monocolored cards with different names and exile them. An opponent chooses one of them. Shuffle that card back into your library. You may cast the other cards without paying their mana costs. Exile Emergent Ultimatum. So, I'm less sold on this one. It's still powerful. You can only get monocolored cards, which is important. I don't think they wanted you getting another copy of Emergent Ultimatum with this, maybe, or maybe the other ultimatums. That would be no good. 2 free cards. You'll always get what seems the worst 2 of the 3 to the opponent you choose. But I am still terrified of what choices my opponents are going to make me make. If you can mix some redundancy into your choices, get like Craterhoof Behemoth and Endray's Forerunners and Decimator of the Provinces, and just tell your opponent, you figure it out. You'll probably eliminate a player when you get to do something like that. Next up, we have Narset of the Ancient Way, who is just kicking her mana cost. Really, really unusual here. We've got, she's kicking the mana cost. 1, a blue, a red, and a white for a legendary Planeswalker Narset. 4 loyalty. It's got a lot of text. +1, you gain 2 life, and then you add a Jeskai mana, 1 of the 3. Spend it only to cast a non-creature spell. -2, draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you discard a non-land card this way, she deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to target creature or planeswalker. And -6, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this emblem deals 2 damage to any target. So this is good for cycling or spell slinger decks. In cycling decks, the -2 offers you more draws, more discards. With something like Gavi Nest Warden, you're going to want that. And then you get some removal in the bargain. Jeskai Spellslinger decks definitely want this. Want to build up to the emblem. Get a little, mana is fine. It's a okay card. I think decks are going to have a hard time protecting Planeswalkers from combat when they're in this color combination. So I'm a little skeptical that this card is good, but if you can protect it, keep it online. Obviously get that emblem, it's great, but most Planeswalkers are great if you can get the emblem. And the real test is how good they are when you can't. Necropanther. 1, a white and a black for a 3/3 Cat Nightmare. Mutate 2, and then 2 white-black hybrid mana. Whenever it mutates, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. You have to play enough eligible creatures, but they'll come right back to the battlefield. Something like Sakura Tri-Elder, Kami of False Hope, other creatures that sacrifice themselves. Getting back something like Fleshbag Marauder could be good. There are a lot of possible options here. Offspring's Revenge. 2, a red, a white, and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, exile target red, white, or black card from your graveyard. Creature card, that is. Create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 1/1. It gains haste until your next turn. So this is kind of like a reverse Nightmare Shepherd. The token sticks around. You're going to want your card that come back to have abilities or come in with counters. It also creates good tokens to mutate onto. I'm still unhappy that you can mutate onto tokens because it's so confusing. So it goes. I'm not in charge of anything. But I think Offspring's Revenge is great in a mutate deck. It's definitely worth looking into for something like Snap decks. Savai Thundermane. Red and a white for a 3/2 elemental cat. Whenever you cycle a card, you may pay 2. Whenever you do, Savai Thundermane deals 2 damage to target creature and you gain 2 life. Another Lightning Rift type effect. Can't hit players, but that's okay. It's a good way to keep boards a little clearer in the early to mid game and can gain you some life as you cycle in the late game if you have a lot of mana and not enough to do with it. Skycat Sovereign. White-blue elemental cat. 1/1 flying. Gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with flying. 2, a white and a blue. Create a 1/1 white cat bird creature token with flying. So this is very much similar to Pride of the Clouds. If you're on a Flying Matters deck, put this in your deck. It feels better than Pride of the Clouds overall because you get to use the ability even when it's not in your hand. It doesn't get pumped by opposing flyers, but that's a small price to pay. Song of Creation. 1, a green, a blue, and a red for an enchantment. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever you cast a spell, draw 2 cards, and at the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. This card's wild. It's reminiscent of Recycle. As long as you can chain together spell after spell after spell, which it's likely you can do because you draw 2 additional cards, you're good. This has obviously got some Teamer or Storm combo potential. Super wild. I'm not, that's not me. That's not for me in Commander. I Storm out in Constructed. That's what I do there. But you can do that if that's your thing. You can Sundial of the Infinite away the discard trigger. You can do flashback shenanigans because you discard the cards if you can't cast them at the end of the turn, and then you flash them back, cast something like Past in Flames and really go off. There's some nasty stuff you can do with Song of Creation, and I'm terrified of it. Next up, we have Zenith Flare, 2, a red and a white. For an instant, deals X damage to any target and you gain X life, where X is the number of cards with a cycling ability in your graveyard. At first I read this, I thought it was kind of a clunky removal spell in cycling decks. Then I realized you can hit the face with it, and if you make sure that most of the cards in your deck have cycling in your cycling deck, you can just dome somebody for 20 plus. Maybe even copy the spell if you have some way of doing that. I think Zenith Flare is an awesome win condition in cycling decks. Cunning Nightbonder, 2 blue-black hybrid mana for a 2/2 human rogue with flash. Spells with flash you cast cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. Only works with flash, not with instants. It's probably too narrow. Giganta, the Wellspring. Oh gosh, this card. 4 and a Gruul hybrid mana for a legendary elemental elk. Companion. No card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana cost. And remember, the rules are very specific about this. The red-black hybrid symbol, for example, is not the same as the red mana symbol or the black mana symbol. So if you have cards with hybrid mana and non-hybrid mana in their cost, as long as they don't duplicate either of those symbols, you're good. This is only playable in 5-color decks or as a 5-color commander. Oh, I forgot to say the ability. It's a 5/5 guess. And tap to add Warburg. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana costs. So slam this in your Niv-Mizzet Reborn deck as the companion. Cut your copy of Supreme Verdict and go to town. Make sure you cut any other cards like that as well. I think this card is absolutely going to just go right into a lot of 5-color decks, but it also could be part of a lot of 5-color decks. Be the commander, rather, because now we have this crazy activated ability that you can find ways to combo off with it. You obviously have to filter that mana in weird ways because it can't be spent to pay generic mana costs, so it's maybe too much work, but it could be a really fun commander. I think it's going to see a decent amount of play as a companion as well. Next up, Obosh, the Prey Piercer, 3 and 2 black-red hybrid mana for a 3/5 Hellion Horror legendary. Companion, your starting deck contains only cards with odd converted mana costs and land cards. If a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. Okay, so we're looking at odd cost burn aggro. That's totally doable. I would run this as a commander, not a companion. Make sure my damage sources were all odd costed, but skip the restriction and be able to play other utility cards. Being able to still play Rakdos Signet in your deck seems pretty good. You could have it as the companion for something like Kervek the Merciless or Vile Smasher the Fierce. Last and possibly least, Sonorous Howlbonder, 1 and 2 red-black hybrid mana for a 2/2 human warrior with menace. Each creature you control with menace can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Mega Menace is very cool. Menace is not a wide enough theme to escape limited, though. This is not going to make it in Commander, most likely. Alright, so that's it for today. That's all the cards I have. Thank you for coming out and checking out the videos. Please make sure to tell your friends, watch the whole playlist, press all the thumbs up and the subscribe and all the other good buttons. I'm sure if you find another button that seems like it would be good for me if you pressed it, please press it. And I'll see you next time with more Commander reviews.